There's a lot to cover with your story. I've heard you talk about how you've had to come out of the closet on three separate occasions regarding three separate closets, and I want to talk about all of them. And I want to start at the very beginning.
Okay, yeah, great. So yeah, there is a lot and one of the reasons why there's so much to cover is because I like to point out that my story is not a story of a spiritual awakening. It's a story of a spiritual remembering or a spiritual coming out of the closet, right? So, spirit's been a part of my life from the very beginning. My earliest memories I can remember my first memory that I can think of is being in the front yard at we I grew up well I grew up here in California, but I was born in Eugene, Oregon in 1974. And we lived in a single wide trailer, my mom and my dad and I, in the middle of this big, there was like a big field and then a little trailer right in the middle of the field. There was a long driveway that went out to the trailer. So
That's
that
like
was where
something
we
out
lived.
of a movie.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad, yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly, yeah. So, only instead of crystal meth, it was marijuana. But because it was the 70s, right? And my childhood is really good, it's very positive, but there are some traumatic experiences in it, just like anybody's. But my early memory is playing in the front yard, and everything to me was alive. And that never has gone away. So everything has feelings, has emotions, everything has a personality, everything is interacting with me. So I'm playing in the front yard and it's like I'm not alone. I'm definitely not alone. My memory, and this is how I know it was a memory and not like a picture that I saw, is my memory is just being surrounded by so many friends. And they weren't people. It was like the plants, the grass, the bug, the blanket, the toy, they all were something that I was having an experience with right from the beginning. This is what my world is like. And I'll take you to the next memory is so my parents were young. They were, early 20s. And so they were young and they argued. And they got divorced when I was 4. So these memories are prior to being 4 years old. And I remember this is where the coming out of the closet starts. It starts in the closet. My closet in my bedroom was my special place. So I would go there whenever there were loud noises going on. I didn't know argument, but I just knew scary, right? So I would go into my room and I would go and and it wasn't hiding in my closet. I would just go into the closet and I would play with my Light Bright and my Viewmaster
Mm.
and there I was not alone in there. I was not alone. My friend was in there. And this time it wasn't a bunch of friends. It was one. It was I refer to it as an other. It felt like an other was in there in me. It wasn't me. I wasn't alone and there was something that I was interacting with in there. I couldn't see it, but I felt it and it just was so comfortable and safe and loving and we would just play with my toys and everything was okay. Everything was so beautiful and wonderful. And that has never left me. So I have one strange experience that I have that's not strange to me, but I think would be strange to other people is I've never been alone in my life. I've never felt alone. I don't know what alone feels like. And my whole life has been like that. So there's always been this relationship with what I now call spirit. I actually call it the we. And the we is what I communicate with, and it's been there with me my entire life. And so having this experience of a world that's interactive and alive and others around me and with me and having that kind of a relationship. And I was the only child at that time. I didn't have a sibling until I was 8 when my mom got remarried. So for those first 8 years, I was an only child, and I didn't have really any other kids. There was a couple of cousins at that point in time. There was one cousin when I was little, and then a few other cousins, but it was just an occasional interaction. So until I went to school, I was the only kid and lots of adults around. So the adults were very loving and nurturing to me, and they never discouraged anything. And so I just continued to evolve in this sort of really nurturing, loving space. Then something happened when I was 4, which was I was in the bathtub, playing in the bathtub. And while I was in the bathtub, we had a rule that I'm supposed to get out of the bathtub before I turn into a raisin. So it was my my little fingers would turn into raisins. And so that's how I knew I was in the bathtub for too long. And so I was shivering cold and I was raisin and but I loved the water. So I didn't really care. But I knew I was in the bathtub for too long. So I got out of the bathtub and I got my towel. And when I opened the door, my single wide trailer, so my mom's right there because the door is right next to the bathroom door. Because I mean the place is only this big, right? So I opened the door and my mom's walking out the door and then she was gone. I thought because I was in the bathtub for too long. And then I don't know if it was a day later or a couple of days later, my father also left and I was taken to my grandmother's house. All of this because I was in the bathtub for too long.
Or so you thought.
Yeah, of course that wasn't the reason.
Right.
Of
Right.
course it wasn't the reason. And what I would later find out is that what was happening is those times when my parents were arguing, I remember furniture being tipped over and things like that. So I thought that there was violence going on, which just fast forward, I would use as a story to allow me to be angry and violent in my life because don't you know that all Pierson men are angry and violent? That's the, my truth, right? I can't help myself. So many years later, when I talked to my mom about this, she says, "What? That's not what happened." She said, "Your father was doing drugs and he couldn't find his drugs, so he's tearing the house apart looking for his drugs. He wasn't violent with me." And I thought, "What? Wait a minute. So then how do I explain all this me being angry and violent all these years?" So that was just something I made up. So
Wow.
so my mom left because her mother told her that if you leave your husband, I will pay for you to go to nursing school. You'll have a good life for you and your son. So you need to get out of there now. And so she loved my father, but she needed to leave because this drug thing was just kind of sort of taking over everything.
Mhm.
And that's really what that was about. It had nothing to do with me. As a matter of fact, she was leaving while I was in the bathtub, probably so she wouldn't have to have me see her
I
leave,
was gonna ask that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
my little 4-year-old understanding of everything actually organized the direction of my life for over 40 years because I wouldn't understand, not until I got into recovery. It was because of addiction saved my life and changed my life because it got me into the 12 steps, which allowed me to really look at something and have a power greater than myself restore me to sanity and be able to see what happened through the lens of a spiritual perspective and actually get the truth,
Mm.
which was, oh, it was all love. The whole thing was love. My mom loved my dad loved my mom. They both loved me. I stayed with my grandmother because that was the safest environment for me to be in. I was put into the arms of an angel who introduced me to spirituality in a way that nobody or nothing ever could have, right? It was actually the perfect situation because I now know that I chose that, right? I
Mm.
know that before I was born, I said they're the ones. They are exactly the ones for me because I need her to be my grandmother. I need her to be my grandmother, and that woman there who would be my mother needs me. And I just need these people to be together just for a minute, so I can be old enough to have attachment to my grandmother, and then they can go their separate ways and live their lives. But I just need them to be together for a minute. And so Spirit did that. And it's the perfect mixture. It really is.
It's interesting. I've thought about this a lot. So many people talk about how we choose our parents, but I have thought often about how much my brother, I believe, had to do with that. I think me being his sister was definitely a part of the choosing of my parents for sure. So I hear you on that, absolutely.
So I'm with my grandmother, and my mom shows up at the door, and she's now got this new boyfriend, and ready to take me with her. And I don't want to go.
Mm,
And I don't by this age, I am absolutely a full blown people pleaser. I'm not about to say I don't want to go with you. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to hurt you again and make you leave again because I remember that. I remember this is all my fault. Right? That never left. So here you are again and you're giving me a second chance and I'm not going to screw this one up again. But I don't trust you and I don't feel safe with you, not because you're going to hurt me, because I'm going to hurt you.
mm,
Right? So I don't feel safe being me with you, is what happened.
oof,
So I go with her and I do my best. He's very nice. Everybody's treating me really well, but I don't trust anybody. And I'm not comfortable with anybody. And I know for sure if you find out who I am, you're gonna leave, right? And now I'm going to school at this point, and these creatures, these little creatures, I don't understand them. What are they? I'm the only one of those on this planet, right? So I don't understand them at all. But I was very sort of distant. I would be on the playground and I'm sitting on the side. I'm not really playing on the playground. I'm sitting on the side watching, but it's not sad or bad. It isn't. I'm an observer and I'm fine with that. So this is fine because remember I'm not alone.
mm,
Me and my buddies are sitting there watching and spirits talking to me about look what that person's doing, look at that. And that's what would happen as I remember being at the grocery store with my grandmother once and somebody pulled it was I think they were oranges and pulled an orange from the wrong place in the pile and the pile fell. And I remember just looking at her and I didn't have the words to say, why did that person do that? I wasn't old enough to say that, but I remember her looking at me and comforting me. And telepathically, she sent me the message of, oh, honey, life's going to be tough for you because you get it and they don't. And I remember there was just this energy exchange between the two of us. I was like, a fully grown soul saying, what the fuck did they just do that for? And she said, we'll never know. That's the exchange that's what life was like with my grandmother. She got me and I got her, and we saw that the other people just didn't get it. Um, so this is what it was like on the playground for me, right? And my spirit friends talk to me that way, and they're explaining everything to me. And so I don't need any of those people out there. I don't need them at all. And when they do approach, it's like, why are you interrupting? Why are you coming here?
can't you see we're busy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're in the middle of something over here.
Yeah, we got something going on right now, and you're not included in it. Um, I mean, you're the subject, but so that's going on, and it's not until I get into about third grade that things start to turn negative because in third grade the kids start asking me questions and saying what are you, a fag, are you gay, stuff like that. And I don't know what they're talking about. I don't even know what that means,
Mm,
but I know that the answer has to be no because this is that same energy when mom left. So I start trying to figure out what is it I'm doing. Is it the way I walk? Is it the way I talk? Is it the clothes I wear? And then it's even down to the really personal stuff like what music I listened to because I loved Dolly Parton and I wanted to play Wonder Woman and I wanted to play Bewitched was the game I wanted to play. Those are the people I wanted on my lunchbox, but I couldn't have those things on my lunchbox. It wasn't because my parents wouldn't let me, it was because I knew that I wouldn't be allowed to have that at school, right? So I had to do things and play with toys and stuff that I really didn't necessarily want. But again, I start to go back into the closet for very different reasons this time and just hiding everything about who I am and trying to figure out how am I supposed to make friends when I can't let anybody know who I am. And I would have some friends over the years that I could fully be myself with, which is very precious to me. I have a memory that I'm going to share with you. I don't share this one very often. So I had one of my best friends, and she lived across the street, and she would let me dress up in her sister's clothes. And I mean, this was just someone I was open and fully able to be friends with. Her mother would interview me like I was Dolly Parton, and we would just, play like that. And oh, by the way, I always knew that I was going to be someone who was going to be interviewed. I used to practice being interviewed. I
Hmm.
used to, I would go for walks and I would imagine that I was being interviewed by Barbara Walters. And this was just what I was like as a kid. Like this is the kind of imaginary play that I do. I'm being interviewed by Barbara Walters. That's what I practice doing. So um, after I came out of the closet, one day I went over to their house. It was on Thanksgiving. I had been invited over there for Thanksgiving, and I knocked on the door, and her mother came to the door, and her mother said, "You're not welcome here." This was the woman that used to interview me and let me be Dolly Parton.
I was just gonna ask, is this the
Yeah,
same woman?
same
That's
woman, the
my.
same woman.
How old were you when you had come out?
I was 18.
So it was, I'm assuming it was right. I know you were right around being a teenager when you had gone down the road of addiction yourself. It was
Yeah,
that before or after, during, right around this
it
time?
was like right in the middle of all of that. And so at this point, so we'll have to go back and we'll have to talk about grandma because at this point, grandma had already passed away. Grandma is the anchor to everything for me. So when I'm with my grandmother, there is no situation where I can be more myself than when I'm with her. And she was a very spiritual person. She had hired someone to draw pictures. A clairvoyant had drawn pictures of her guardian angels, and she had them up in her bedroom. And she had one of her best friends. We would go to her house, and her house was haunted. There were ghosts there, and they would sit and talk about it, and they would have people come over and do readings and stuff. So I'm around all of this kind of stuff, and it's just so normal to me, right? And um, she would, when I wasn't with her, she would put me in a bubble to keep me safe.
Hmm.
And when I was at Grandma and Grandpa's house, they lived on the Oregon coast. My phone needs to be turned off. They lived on the Oregon coast, and back then you could play when you were a kid. You could just go outside and be gone all day long, right? And we had a connection with each other, so she always knew I was safe. And I remember when it would be lunchtime, I would just suddenly know it was lunchtime, and then I would be down playing on the beach, and I would just come back home, and she'd be standing there. So we had this connection where she could just call me, and I would know, and I would come back, and it was just such an easy, natural spiritual connection. So spirituality was being nurtured in a way that was we didn't even really have to talk about it so much, right? Um, and I when my mom took me, she got remarried and we moved to California. So now I'm in California during the year, but as soon as school is out, I'm on a plane by myself going back to grandma and I spend the entire summer at grandma and grandpa's house. And then I don't come back home to California until it's time to go back to school. So during that time, grandma got sick with cancer. And this is where I learned a lot about how all of that works. I remember her telling me that the cancer was because she died, she had cancer in multiple parts of her body, but it was colon cancer ultimately that took her life. And I remember the last time I saw her, we were sitting together and she was letting me know that it was the last time. And she said, you've got to learn how to express your emotions because that's what happened to me is swallowing all the emotions. She said keeping it all inside was what this was. So in her own words, she said that to me. And I took that to heart. And she used to spend time with me, helping me understand what it was going to be like to communicate with her after she didn't have a body anymore.
Hmm.
So we would lay in her bed back to back, facing opposite directions. And it's like this, it'll be like this. You won't be able to see me,
Hmm.
but you'll know I'm there. And we'll be able to still talk, but what I'm going to see is going to be different than what you're going to see. So it's like I'm looking out the sliding glass door and she's looking at, the pictures on the wall. And it's like, what is it like to be where you are? And, little just
Understanding.
sharing with each other like that, right?
Um,
Or, when I'm in the kitchen and you're in the living room and we're not talking to each other, but you can hear me and feel me and you know that I'm there. Yeah, yeah. She said, it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that. And then Grandma and Grandpa and I used to drive to this little cemetery, and we would have picnics at the cemetery. And it was this really cool old cemeteries up on top of this big hill, and it was one of those really old ones with the big headstones, and it was kind of creepy looking and stuff, but also really beautiful, overlooking the river. And we had these great picnics there, and I loved it. I loved going there. And it wasn't until my I went there for the funeral, for the burial, that I realized we had been having picnics on their burial plots the whole time.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was this setup to make sure that I wasn't going to feel abandoned or left or lost, and that this would be an experience for me that would be safe and be okay. And it worked. Everything that they did to prepare me worked. And so when she died, I immediately went right into communicating with her. I remember going in my room and lighting a candle and saying, "Okay, use the candle, make it do something," and then it would do something, and then I did the same thing when Grandpa died. I was like, "Make the candle do something." So I had this little signature for the candle would behave a certain way if she was there and a certain way if he was there, and I was doing stuff like that, and just immediately went right into, "Okay, I got to figure out how to communicate with you." And so that's one of the gifts that I have now is I'm able to help people with how to communicate with their loved ones.
What did like the grief look like for you regarding your grandmother, or did you kind
Yeah.
of shut that
No,
out?
that's it.
Or
That's really important because it wasn't so much alcohol and drugs, but it was the people that were doing alcohol and drugs that embraced me and carried me through that period of time. And I didn't care about school anymore. The only reason I went to school at that point was so that I could ditch school, right?
so you've lost your grandmother. You have finally found some people at school that you feel like you're a part of. How did it go from smoking cigarettes to and it not
Yeah.
only an addiction or not only using, but you ended up becoming a dealer as well. So
Yeah. So that's quite a
that,
fun journey.
how did
So
that happen?
well, that wasn't instant and it wasn't subtle. So
Okay.
so the journey with addiction. So yeah, so it's like telling your story is got so many layers to it, right?
Yeah.
So this story of addiction, so yeah, it starts like we've just been talking about, and I remember I was the first person in my group of friends to move out. So I got really involved in drama and theater and all of that, and which r- totally saved my life. Totally saved my life. And I still remember the teacher that first introduced me to it. I was really depressed, and she thought maybe I was anemic or something because I'm falling asleep in class all the time, and she was really concerned about me. And so went to the doctor, got tested for anemia. I wasn't anemic, and so she was really getting worried. And she said to me, "I think you should try out for the school play." And I had not been involved in drama at all. This was in seventh grade, and or no, eighth grade. And she was also the drama teacher. And so I said, okay, so I did, and I got cast as Bill Sykes in Oliver Twist, and I loved it. I had so much fun. And she saved my life. She absolutely did, because I was starting to drift into a really dark place because, I hadn't found my people yet, and lost grandma, and not connected to my mom or my stepdad, and just really feeling lost. So she connected me to the drama, and it saved my life and changed the direction of my life. So when I went to high school, everything was about choir, theater arts, all that kind of stuff. That was my main focus because that's where I felt really accepted, and I could just be myself, right? I could be myself again. So when I graduated is when I came out of the closet, because I lived in Huntington Beach, and Huntington Beach is a very, very, very conservative town. And so I couldn't be out of the closet when I was in high school, although people probably knew, but we didn't talk about it. And I had girlfriends all the way through, And they were just my best friends is really what they were, right? Um, and I remember the day that I graduated, as soon as the diploma touched my hand, it was like a spiritual experience. As soon as it touched my hand, I knew I was gay because I was free. It's like
Mm.
I can go now. I can go now. And so I end up moving out and I get my own apartment. And so that I'm the first one in my group of friends to have my own apartment. That's a disaster because because that means we got a new party pad, right? And and so that's what that was. So that's where drugs really sunk their teeth into me, was because I'm now living and I moved to Long Beach where you can be openly gay, and I was openly gay. As openly gay as I possibly could be. I mean, and I even moved into because at this point I not only became addicted to alcohol, and crystal meth came into the picture, and I was immediately addicted to that. Immediately doing weird things with that. So I was immediately addicted to crystal meth and cigarettes, but also I also became addicted to sex. And at that time, we didn't have the internet yet, so we used to have to go on phone lines to
Mm.
hook up with people. And I was running up these like $700, $800 phone bills. And back then, that's thousands of dollars now. Like, that's insane, right? I'm running up these phone bills, and so the only way I can pay my bills is by selling myself, not drugs, just me. So I'm prostituting, and it's just it was fine though because I was having fun until I wasn't, right? Till I'm doing things in situations that I don't want to be in. And so now I need more drugs so that I can do this thing, so I can pay for the phone bill, so that I can, it's just
Mhm.
this loop. Because at that point in time, too, what I learned about that, the sex with the people I wanted to have sex with, is that it had to be done in secrecy, again in the closet, right? So the only way I could be comfortable being out is to be numb to all of the negative voices that I'm experiencing. So now I've got not just the spirit friends, but I've got these negative voices also. So I've got this whole cast of characters going on, and the negative voices are so much more intense because
Mm.
they're all based on my fears and my insecurities. And so I'm no longer listening to the loving, nurturing voices anymore. I'm not hearing them anymore. And because I'm numbing myself, I also don't have access to that anymore. So at this point, I'm getting to the point where I'm using alcohol and drugs and sex to numb me from the pain of everything I'm believing about who and what I am and how wrong it is. And it's the only way that I can feel any connection to other people, is to be numb to all of that. And if I'm numb to all of that, I can't hear spirit. And what I do hear is fear. And so it's just more and more and more and more and more. And then I got to numb, 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 numb. And it's a wrap. It's just
Mm.
a wrap. There's just it becomes my whole life. During this time, somebody noticed that, so I was at a party, and I had a friend who couldn't dance. And so I pulled him off to the side and I was showing him just some little moves just to make him feel comfortable. And someone who was there, well, I'm going to call one of my angels, because I was dating him at the time, but I know that he only came into my life just so that he could connect me to my career, and then he was gone. But he noticed me doing this and he pulled me aside. He happened to be a teacher for Arthur Murray's, so he was a ballroom dance teacher.
Wow.
And he said, "You are one of the most natural dance teachers I've ever seen." And I was like, I mean, I'm a performer, but I'm not a dance teacher, right? And he said, "No, you really, really are." That was amazing, because what he saw in me was my true calling. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher at the very core. It's what I do. It's my passion. It doesn't even really matter what I'm teaching. I'm just a teacher. So he suggested that I that I go and start the training program at Arthur Murray's, and I was like, I'm going to be a psychologist. I'm not a dancer. I'm not going to be. I can't make a living at that, right? So, anyways, I tried it out, and then 2 weeks later, I dropped out of college and started my career as a ballroom dance instructor, which turned out to be a 30-year, very successful career.
Incredible.
Yeah. So now I'm a ballroom dance teacher by day, a drug addict by night, selling myself, and now you know what I mean? It's
Were
insane.
you
And
using during the day or were you pretty sober during the day?
well, I wouldn't say I was sober, but but I wasn't actively using.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, but I
yes.
certainly wasn't sober by any means. But at first it was like mostly it was like full throttle on the weekends.
Mm.
And then during the week, I would just gradually come down and suffer through. And then it would move to where the weekends became longer and the sober period became shorter. Until eventually I was using all the time. And then eventually I was using at work too. It eventually did move into that. And one of my really intense spiritual experiences was my first experience with Archangel Michael. And I had an apartment, and my roommate at the time had been invited by the police department to stay with them indefinitely. And so I'm alone in my apartment, and somebody had stolen we used to have phone books, right? My personal phone book, back when we had landlines in the houses. And so my phone was shut off because I couldn't pay it because of the drugs. My electricity was shut off because I couldn't pay it because of the drugs. And somebody had stolen my phone book, so I couldn't call anybody to bring me drugs, and my roommate was gone. There's no food in the house, and I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm coming down, and I don't have access to any of the stuff that I need, and it's getting really dark. I'm starting to think of I can't do this anymore. And I'm not thinking of getting into recovery. I'm just thinking I can't do life anymore. I'm done. This is this is the end. And I looked up, and the ceiling turned dark and opened up, and there was light that came in the center. And a being, a winged being, it looked like an angel, but it was black, solid black with gray all around it. And it was quite impressive, very intimidating. But I wasn't scared, but it was very intimidating, very intense. Came in and then just wrapped the wings around me. And then it was like a cocoon. And when I woke up, I was fully sober. I was motivated to get up and go to work. So it's like it just cleansed me. It just cleansed me. And I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I was ready to go back to work so I could make some money. Told my boss that I needed some help. And, so she gave me a little bit of money. And anyways, got me back on my feet again. I'd like to say I stopped using at that time. I did not stop using, but for a couple of weeks I did. And it was able to get my rent paid and get done what I needed to do and get back on my feet again. I end up going into treatment for a little while, and
How did even that come about? Like, did you go into
oh,
treatment on your free will? Did someone
oh,
suggest it?
no way. That never happens. No, absolutely not. Um, no, well, and that's not totally true. So, um, I got arrested because I got pulled over for something like a brake light being out or something like. It's always something like that, right? And I've got drugs in my car because
That's
I'm
what you were
completely
doing.
unmanageable. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm because I have to. So, and I get arrested, and I end up getting this thing called Prop 36, which is like a program, an outpatient program. And I'm trying to stay off meth in an outpatient program, which is really difficult for me to do because not only can I do meth, but I do math, right? So I can figure out how to get around that test, right? So, you got if I do meth today, I've got 72 hours before I will test clean. So I know what day I'm gonna go. And that works out for like a month or so, and then pretty soon I can't manage that anymore. And it's like I'm just loaded. So I had this one day where I had given my car to someone so they could go get drugs and they didn't come back. So they stole my car. And so I went to the police station and reported my car stolen. They arrested me for being under the influence of methamphetamine. And because I was in there overnight, they let me out the next day, but because I was in there overnight, I missed my outpatient class. So I walked over to the outpatient facility, and when they saw me coming up, they just closed the window. They were like, "No, sir, you're not allowed to come here." And I stuck my arm in the window. And I know at that point, and this is part of my story multiple times, I was possessed by the Holy Spirit. I was not choosing to walk there. I did not choose to put my arm in the window, but something walked me there and put my arm in the window, and they opened the window and they said you can't come in here. You're exited from the program. I said, I need residential treatment. And so they let me in, right? Again, it was I can't do this. And so
Mhm.
they let me in and they helped me. And I rented residential treatment, and I like to say I'm like MRSA because I'm treatment resistant, right? So I'm in treatment and I'm breaking rules and I'm addicted to sex, so I'm having sex with people and I get kicked out of treatment and I'm a terrible client. I'm a horrible client. And I'm only there for about 20 days before they're like, you gotta go. And I immediately called my sponsor that I had at the time and I said, they're kicking me out of treatment and I can't go and live on my own. Again, I can't. So he helped me get into a sober living right away. And I stayed in that sober living for a year and a half. And during that time, I found spirit again. I ended up being able to stay sober for 7 years. And during that time, I became an ordained minister. And, that was a 2-year process, right? And really just devoting myself to connecting to spirit and I remember when I became an ordained minister during the ordination ceremony, they said, I was so offended by this. They said, the blessing was you have a silent ministry. I was so mad. What do you, I'm going to tell everybody how to save their lives. Like, how am I supposed to do that if you just put a gag order on me? I was so offended. Um, and what I would later understand, and it took me years to understand this, is that my ministry is through how I show up. It's in between the work that I do with spirit is in between the words. The words are just a manifestation of the work, but the actual work is in actively listening to people, listening from my heart, and listening spiritually to people so I can hear what's behind what they're saying. And that's what that silent ministry, the actual ministry is not what I say, it's what I do and how I show up. But it took me a long time. I was very offended by that. Um, but during this, so I was devoted to God, and I also I got into a relationship, and I was devoted to the relationship, and I was devoted to my career, and my career took off, and now I'm not just a ballroom dance teacher, but I'm a professional competitor, and I'm traveling to cool places in the world, and just having this great life. I don't need recovery anymore. So I stopped going to AA meetings, and I stopped working the steps, and eventually I stopped being sober because I thought that it would be okay, right? And so my relapse after 7 years was just a single glass of wine. And I got permission because I told my friends, I said, I want to just try an experiment. That was the word I used. I said, I just want to try having one glass of wine. And they were like, you haven't drank the whole time we've known you. So yeah, definitely you can have a glass of wine. And so I had a glass of wine. And the worst thing that could possibly happen to an alcoholic happened to me. Nothing.
Mm.
Absolutely nothing. But see, here's the thing that I didn't realize at the time, and I like to share this with people. If your checklist is I woke up in my own bed, I had my own clothes on, there was no blood, my car wasn't crashed, my nothing, I wasn't arrested. That was my checklist to make sure that it went okay. That is not a normal checklist by any means. Right? I'm like, as long as those things didn't happen, I'm fine. So this was a great experiment. So it was only a matter of a couple of weeks before I'm drinking every day and I'm starting to do other drugs, and it just very quickly spiraled out of control. And then this is where I had to start selling drugs this time because I was not going to go back to selling myself because that just, I couldn't do it. Instead, I went to selling drugs because it was the only way at this point. I immediately, when I start doing meth again, I'm doing meth more than I ever did before because my addiction was growing the whole time, even though I wasn't an active addiction. This is what we know about it. It's progressive in nature. So the addiction is not this, you don't go back to the same addiction. It's growing with you. And when you feed that beast again, it's bigger than it ever was before. So I immediately have to start selling drugs and I end up retiring as a ballroom dance teacher because I have to devote my life to the drug addiction because I I can't do it any other way. This wasn't a matter of choice at this point. This is what I had to do. So that's how selling drugs came in. And the way that I used to help people through teaching dance, I was still doing that when I'm selling drugs. I was like the local bartender type thing, right? Where it's like they're coming to me and I'm still through all of this, I'm still so I wasn't disconnected from spirit this time. I stayed connected to spirit and I was still living my destiny, but it was just with a different group of people. I'm like this, spiritual guru on meth, which is a nightmare, total nightmare. So I had moved out to Albuquerque, New Mexico to get away from this relationship that had fallen apart. I don't have to get into what had happened there, but the relationship was falling apart, and because I was no longer going to meetings, I didn't have the support network I needed, and I wasn't working the steps, so I didn't know how to forgive and all of that. So all I could do was run, right? So I did what we in recovery we call a geographic. It's like I'm out of here. So I moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I spent 2 years there without drinking or using, but I was going to a bar every night because I needed to make friends. So I was going to a bar every night, but I'm an alcoholic proving they're not an alcoholic, which is a very special thing because an alcoholic proving they're not an alcoholic can go for a long time without drinking or using,
Hmm.
right? So I proved I wasn't an alcoholic or an addict by going to the bar every night and didn't drink for 2 years. 7 days a week, though, I'm at the bar, which is already strange behavior. But let's just go past that. So so this is where I do my experiment because I'm doing my experiment with a bunch of drunk drag queens, right? So of course they're like, "We got you, honey. You're good. Have a drink." So in this time though, I want to bring this up too, is I have so my partner now, her name is Abby, and so I'm gay, but I have a partner who's a woman, which is a very interesting relationship. And it's very will and grace.
Yeah,
That's what the relationship
I
is.
could
And
see
so
that. Yeah.
so we had been friends for a very long time, and at this point in time, she would come out there every few weeks. She would fly out from California to spend like a weekend with me and stuff. And she was with me at that time when I did the experiment. So she was one of the people that said, "Yeah, you can have that experiment," right? Um, and while I'm out there, um, I have this psychotic break because I'm on Xanax and I'm at work and I'm like saying weird things on my dance lessons, and the clients are telling my boss, they're like, something's not right with Jeremy. So my boss comes to me and says, "Are you on drugs?" And I was so offended by that question because I'm not on drugs. I'm just on alcohol and Xanax. How dare you accuse me of being on drugs? Well, and on the weekend, meth and marijuana. But other than that, I'm not on drugs. It was so offended. And so I was asked to take a couple of weeks off of work to pull my shit together, right? So I take a couple of weeks off of work and I decide I'm going to stop taking the Xanax. By the way, if anybody's listening to this and they're on Xanax and they're having a problem, never stop taking the Xanax because I had a psychotic break and I could have died. It is very, very dangerous. Always, always seek a doctor's care if you're going to stop anything really. But alcohol And benzos are the two that you can die from withdrawal. So I just wanted to throw that. That's a little public service announcement. You can stop, but you need to have help. So definitely don't do that alone. So I stopped everything and I had a psychotic break. And in this psychotic break, I called my boss's wife, met her at a restaurant, and proceeded to say horrible things about her husband. And I believed all of it. Horrible, horrible things. These people are like the most ethical people I've met or ever met in my life. Like they are so they're such wonderful people. And so for this kind of stuff to come out was the most absolutely psychotic thing in the world. And I said horrible stuff and humiliated her and myself in this restaurant.
Oh,
And so I was asked to leave the state of New Mexico.
what?
Yeah, yeah. So no, they set me up with a job back here in California and they said, you gotta go. You gotta
Mm,
go.
mm.
This was too much. And I was really grateful that they were loving enough to get me a job at another studio and helped set me up to come back to California. So I came back to California and that's when I started selling drugs and then everything just really went to hell when I came back to California.
Were you living with anyone, living alone?
Yeah, so when I moved back to California, I was living now with my partner. So I
Okay.
moved in with her and she was still married at the time. And so it's just this wonderful relationship. Her family fully understands our relationship. And she was married at the time. And then so she started the process of getting divorced. And then we were living in Upland, California. And then we moved to Long Beach together and got a place together and started living together. And we made the commitment at that point to be partners. We decided we're going to live together the rest of our lives because nobody's going to take better care of me than you. That was where we made a conscious decision and we spoke that out loud together. We're partners now. We're going to be life partners. We're going to live together for the rest of our life because this relationship is the most perfect companion that I could ever have. And I'm not even going to try to look for someone better.
Was she aware of any of the alcohol and drug use?
So I was keeping it away from the house. I was keeping it away from the house. But more and more, I was coming home less and less and less. And I
Mm,
remember one time my parents were over visiting, and she told my parents, "Oh yeah, he hasn't slept in his bed for over a year." And I was like, "What? Why did you just say that to them? That's not true." She said, "No, it is true. You haven't spent the night here in over a year. I don't know what's going on, but." And she was just, accepting me, and loving me. And this continued to happen. And she would frequently ask me, not frequently, but occasionally she would ask me, "Do you still live here?"
mm,
Because I would come home at 4 o'clock because I still had this one dance class a week that I taught. I was hanging on by a thread to my dance career. I had one dance class a week, and it would take me all week to figure out how I was going to be at the right level of intoxication to be able to show up for this one dance class. So I'm coming home just in time to be sober enough to teach this class. And she was my assistant, so she would go with me and we'd drive together. And I'm like coming down, but I'm like trying to time everything just right. And there were times that I would come home after just being held up at gunpoint or like some crazy swinging from the chandelier lifestyle. And I'm like, "Hi, I'm here. Let me go put on my shirt and tie and let's go teach the samba at Leisure World." It's like, what kind of a crazy world am I living in? And so I'm living this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. But I'm just coming home for that. And then the awful thing about it is I love being with her more than
mm.
anything in the world. I love being with her, but I can't be myself now because I didn't want her to have to go through all of that. I was trying to keep that away from her and her life, trying to not tear her life down, right? Trying to protect her. So I'm not feeling rejected by her, but I'm hiding from her, which is again, there I am again going into the closet now so this is the third in the closet because this time it's about my addiction. I've got this person that I can be open with about everything in my life except this. And this thing is like the biggest thing in my life right now. So I'm trying to hide it from her, but trying to hide it from her without lying to her because I don't want to lie to her, which is so hard to do. So hard to wiggle and
Mhm.
figure out that. And so the best thing I can do is stay away. Just stay away as much as possible as my life is being burned down to the ground so that I don't take her through that. But I end up getting arrested a few times and she's bailing me out. And apparently those times I told her the truth and I didn't even remember that I told her the truth. When I finally got sober, she's like, "You told me that you were just, you know, that you were selling drugs. You told me this." I did I was so out of it I didn't remember that I even told her. So she knows at this point, but there's nothing she can do about it until it finally gets to where I'm really getting into a dark space again. It felt much like when the Archangel Michael came in again. And it was getting like that, where I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm like, I've got to figure out how to get back on track here, or I'm going to die. But I can't stop. I can't stop. It's getting worse and worse. And it's like, this is the thing about addiction is the more I try to control it, the worse it gets.
Mm.
I decide I'm not going to use today. I use more than any other day. So I had plans to go home and see my family for Christmas. And as an addict, when I'm in active addiction, I'm allergic to holidays and I'm allergic to airports because these are just things I can't do. I I can't do it. And so instead, what happened, I was supposed to leave the next morning and instead, I remember I came home and my partner had asked me, "Are you packed yet?" And I said, "No," but I said, "I left my wallet at the last place I was at." And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I really left my wallet or not. I have no idea. And it was just like, I can't stop using, I need to go. So I went and I used more and I ended up in a complete psychosis and I'm driving my car around. At one point, I turned into a werewolf. And I remember being a werewolf and I was hunting. And I was just snarling, snot coming out of my nose, and I'm hunting. And that's the sex addiction coming in at the same time, right? So I'm out there hunting for something and just this beast completely out of control. But I'm inside there somewhere going, oh my God, I've turned into a werewolf and I'm totally out of control and I'm supposed to be at home packing. That's still there, but I can't stop it from happening. And I end up in the car and I'm driving my car like a mad person. And it reminds me of the scene out of 101 Dalmatians where Cruella de Vil is driving her car and she's going around corners on two wheels and she's just a beast. That's what I looked like. And I hit multiple cars. I'm doing crazy stuff. And it was dark when it started. And by the time it happened, it was 8:30 in the morning by the time I finally got into the accident that stopped me. And I remember multiple times during this period of time that where people I would pass out in a intersection and people would be knocking on the window and I would come to and I would yell some lie and I'd take off again. Multiple things like that happened. So the police had been called and the police were following me and I thought I was in a Christmas parade because of the lights and I'm a werewolf in a Christmas parade. Is what I'm thinking. And I end up crashing my car into the side of the library in downtown Belmont Shores at 8 or 8:30 in the morning on December 23rd while people are out shopping and stuff like that.
Wow.
And I remember I get out of the car and I sat down on the curb and I didn't try to talk my way out of it. It was that mo I can't. I can't. And when I said I can't, it happened again. This time it didn't look like an angel though. It looked like the universe just turned into this big bowling ball, this big dark force, and it just rolled over me in slow motion. It just steamrollered me and it flattened me out. I exhaled everything I had, everything. So I was completely surrendered. There was nothing in me that wanted to get out of this situation. I was all in, which is different than the last time. The last time I wanted out. This time I was like, I'm in. What do you want to know? And they asked me questions and I told them the truth about everything. I told them everything that was in my car, and they were like, they couldn't believe I was telling them the truth because I was setting myself up for multiple felonies. But I said, I need to be stopped. I need help. I need help. I need help. I can't. And so that started my journey into recovery. And my 10-day detox was horrible. Um, so my partner bailed me out of jail. On the way home, she said nothing so loud. It was everything. Nothing was said on the way home, and a spiritual conversation happened. And I made the decision, I can't do this to I can't make her kick me out. I cannot put her through that. That was the final straw. The thought of her having to make the decision to kick me out broke my heart so hard that it sobered me and
Mm.
it got me into recovery. So when people say you can't get into recovery for someone else, total bullshit. Total bullshit. I did it for her. I didn't do it for me. I did it for her. I can't put her through that. So we get home. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't say anything. And so I sit in my chair in the living room and I pass out. And when I wake up in the morning, there's this little sticky note on it. Actually, it's one of these glasses. A little sticky note was on the glass. And it had the numbers of some treatment facilities on it. And I knew what that meant. And so I sat in my chair and I remember I tried to get up out of my chair and I had drugs in my room. And I tried to get up out of my chair and there was a hand on my chest and it pushed me back down. Couldn't see it, could feel it. And that hand pushed me back down into the chair. And it did the same thing it did to me before it put me asleep. It just that hand felt like so much love and I just was comforted and I would go to sleep. And this would happen multiple times. I would come to, fade to black, come to, fade to black. And I was either in my chair or I would be in my bedroom and I would be sleeping in a pile of dirty clothes because I just didn't think I deserved anything better. And that went on for 10 days. And that hand kept me from using. And it's just, I mean, I have so many stories of spiritual things that happened then over the next few months. But what happened over the next few months is the we came back again. I remember the first time I heard it was I was coming home from a meeting and I'd gotten in an argument with someone at the meeting and I was thinking I'm never going to be able to go back to that place again and like what am I going to do? And I still had drugs in my apartment and I was walking up to the gate of my apartment and I got to the gate and then I heard it. The voice that I hadn't heard in so long and it said keep walking. And when I hear the voice of spirit like that, I just do what it says. There's no argument. That's how I know I'm tuned into spirit because there's nothing to argue about. It's not telling me what to do. It's telling me what I'm going to do. It's just like it's a narrator and it's so non-judgmental that it's you just do what it says. It's so easy to do what it says. So it said keep walking and so I kept walking and then I got a couple blocks and I went to turn around and it said, no, keep walking. So I kept walking. And that kept happening every few blocks until I ended up at the beach. And so this journey happened and I ended up going on an 8-mile walk that day. And I saw the most amazing things. I remember looking at the water and I saw little gold flakes in the water and I'd never noticed that before. And I looked out at the ocean and it was little it there were the little speckles on the ocean. It was the sun reflecting in the ocean, but each one was a sun. Each little dot was a sun, and I'd never seen that before. And it was like some sort of a movie or a cartoon. It was just the world was coming alive and the flowers were coming alive and talking to me again. It was the same world I had when I was a little kid.
Mm.
My world was back. My world was back. I was back. And and so then I went on that walk every day for 2 years, that 8-mile walk every day for 2 years. And I got connected to the community. people's dogs knew me, the squirrels knew me, the people knew me, the shopkeepers knew me. And it was like, I remember I had my cousin came to visit me one time and she went for a walk with me and she said, "Oh my God, this is like you're a celebrity." And it's like being in a musical. Everybody's coming out saying, "Hey, Jeremy, hello, hello," everywhere I went. And I started taking people on gratitude walks. And people would call me and say, "Hey, I heard that I should go on a walk with you." And so this is starting to happen. And the pandemic happened. I couldn't teach dance anymore. And so then it's like I'm a spiritual teacher now. And I'm taking people on spiritual walks and I'm just showing them how to show up in the community and how showing them how to connect to spirit and off I went as a spiritual teacher. There just was just this natural thing that happened. And it was like everything that I had been through in my life was leading up to my ability to walk people through that. It's the most
Yeah.
precious thing I've ever experienced. And this final frontier has been coming out of the closet about my spiritual experiences because I can't stay sober if I don't.
Yeah. Wow.
I can't. And if I don't stay sober, I'll die. So I can't thrive if I'm still hiding
A part.
such an important part of me.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that important part of me was going to be something that was going to be so useful to help others. I wasn't expecting that. I just thought this was going to be a thing I was going to finally admit this and y'all were going to think I was crazy, but so what?
Right.
And
Right.
I haven't had a single person call me crazy. I haven't, everybody I've admitted it to has found some sort of motivation in what I've shared. So it's
Mm.
just been, I was so wrong about what I thought it was going to do. And I was wrong about the world. The world isn't the scary place I thought it was.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Before we go, I want to leave plenty of time for you to talk about the work you're doing now.
My spiritual coaching company is called Practical Spirituality. And the whole idea behind that is that we're all having these spiritual experiences, and I think that so many people are able to find connection to different groups that are comfortable for them, but there are so many people being left behind. So many people that are having normal everyday experiences and they're feeling disconnected to spirit. And what I have a gift is my ability to translate spirits, right? So when I'm working with someone, there's so many things that we can work on, but my passion is really taking spiritual experiences and translating them from woo-woo wording, right, into just normal everyday stuff. Like what is an archangel? An archangel is a set of principles that you can live by, right? So I can talk to people like that so we can bring this whole thing down to earth a little bit so that everybody gets to be connected to their, I like to call it living from the inside out instead of from the outside in. So just real authentic living from the inside out, which means we're going to find out what you're in the closet about because everybody's in the closet about stuff. We're going to find out how you can actually live authentically as the person you really are. And we're always meant to be. I also am very passionate about working with what I like to call spiritual first responders. And to me, that's the counselors, the therapists, the sponsors, the coaches, the just the light workers. We tend to forget that we need help too,
Mm.
right? And then what happens to the spiritual first responders is they're going to find this happening. Um, I can't talk to anybody about my struggle because everybody expects me to be fucking grateful all the time. Right. And people are like, well, where's your light that you're always talking about? Yeah, I didn't say I don't get angry. I didn't say I don't get hopeless. I didn't say I don't get frustrated. Right.
I'm still
And
human.
so, yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's more painful when I do than it used to be because it
Mm.
used to be so normal and now it's not as often. So when it does happen, it's even more traumatic. Right. And then, you want to talk about it, and then everybody's saying, "Oh, I thought you were Mr. Gratitude." You know what? I, so that's the spiritual first responders. They need support too. So I'm really passionate about that. So it could be people that already have a spiritual path and know that, but need support in being able I have a gift for being able to hear or feel or know when somebody's saying something that's not in alignment with the truth for them. And so people that are doing this work already, or people that are feeling lost and want to know how to feel more connected, either of those groups, that's the work that I can do with people, is to help them figure out where are they believing something that just isn't true. Like my belief that I had to hide all of this, that just wasn't true. I also help people in recovery, right? So aside from sponsoring people in 12-step programs, some people don't feel like they resonate with 12-step programs necessarily. So they're not going to go there and get a sponsor, and they want someone to be a recovery coach. So I'm there for that too. Um, where we're going to use spirituality and we're going to use what their lived experience is to figure out how to make the see, the thing about addiction is that if you have a life with addiction, when you chose that pre-birth planning, when you chose addiction, you also chose recovery. So recovery is absolutely a part of your life because they're two sides of the same coin. So there's people out there that think, I don't know if I can recover. You absolutely can. But sometimes we need to be creative about the approach, right? So there's definitely a way for that to happen, and it may be by somebody getting to know you and help you think outside of the box a little bit, right?
I love that.
So that's available too with the work that I do. And so you can find me. You can go to my Instagram is the easiest place to find me. It's Jeremy L. Pierson, Jeremy, initial L, and then Pierson. So at Jeremy L. Pierson. On there's a link to my link tree where you can go to my YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel. My YouTube is at JP Practical Spirituality. And I talk about all kinds of stuff on my YouTube channel. So eventually, I hope to get some support in being able to organize it a little bit, right? Because I'm not very organized, but I'm going to put that out there. If anybody out there wants to help me out with that, please reach out to me because I need someone to help me get organized and help me with all of that. Um, but yeah, I make a lot of videos. There's a lot of shorts that are on there because I'm finding that people really like the shorts, but
Yeah.
there's some longer videos too, stuff about recovery, how to help people if you have loved ones that need help with addiction, and then all kinds of spiritually related topics as well. And then also I'm on TikTok, same handle on TikTok.
Jeremy, this was so great.
I feel the same way.
All right, Jeremy, I love you. I'm
Thank
giving
you,
you a
thank you,
big
thank you.
hug. Thank you so
Yes.
much. I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right.